So I got a voice in my head, right? And, I've heard the, geniuses talk to themselves. I've heard that crazy people talk to themselves, heard all types of shit, right? But, the fact of the matter is that I have like a voice in my head that is constantly telling me shit, right? It's constantly having a conversation with me. It's always asking me questions. It's always telling me things, right? And, so something I've noticed is like kind of how your life is going and even how your day is going is going to affect like the things that I feel like everyone has like this internal voice. I read like a statistic that said that something like 30% of people don't have a voice in their head that talks to them, like their own like internal dialogue, which I can't imagine because I can't get mine to shut the fuck up most of the time, right? But for the most part, we all have one, right? And I've noticed that like depending on how you've been living your life and depending on like how even your day is going and what you're doing during your day will affect the things that that voice is saying and the things that that voice is asking, right? And so it's like when I was in the period of my life where I was doing all the wrong things, so to speak, like all the things that I had told myself that I didn't want to do and that I wanted to stop doing and that I wanted to not be a part of my life, right? So things like, cheating and hooking up with random people and watching porn and drinking and smoking weed and taking pills and, being angry to the point that I lash out at people and to the point where I lash out at myself. I used to struggle with, hitting myself, right? Like I'd beat the shit out of myself, like literally with my own fists, right? Things like, yelling at my kids, just all these things where I would let, my emotions like run a train on me, right? And, it was like, I noticed that as I started to cut out a lot of these like negative behaviors, that the voice in my head would change and it would start to say different things and it would start to ask different questions, right? So whenever I was doing, all these negative behaviors, right? Lashing out at people, lashing out at myself, smoking, drinking, cheating, hooking up with random people, watching porn, taking pills, whatever, right? The question was always, why are we doing this again? Why are we here again? Oh, here we go again. Oh, there's James doing it again, right? Like that was the main question and the main things that my voice inside was saying to me, right? But then I noticed as I started to cut out a lot of those behaviors, right? Then rather than here we go again, why are we here again, James? Why are we doing this again, James? The voice switched and it would start to say things that were more positive and it would ask questions that were more positive, right? And so my main question that I've asked myself for a long time now, whenever I'm on a streak where I'm doing real good and not engaging in these behaviors that I don't want to engage in, is how, right? It goes from it went from what it was to how are we gonna do it? How are we gonna get from where we are to where we want to be, right? And questions like, where do we want to be? Where do we see ourselves, X amount of years from now? How are we going to get there, James? How are we going to get there, James? How are we going to get there, James? That's the question that my voice repeats to me whenever I'm getting in a spot where I'm starting to do good, right? And then the minute that I backslide, right? I eat like shit for a day, I sleep in, I, you know, break and I watch some porn, right? It's like the voice changes back immediately, like immediately after, you know, I notice that I'm fucking up and that I'm backsliding, right? It says, well, here we go again, James. Why are we doing this again, James? Why are we here again, James? Right? And so, like, part of the way to build like a positive attitude is to not do negative things, right? Is to cut out, all the negative things that you don't want to be doing one by one, right? And eventually you get to a point where you look back and you realize, like, oh shit, for, the past X amount of weeks, X amount of months, right? I've been asking myself more positive questions and my internal voice has been saying more positive things to me, right? And so it's like, whenever you're thinking about, like, why should I cut out, like, the negative behaviors that, I feel are negative and that I don't want to be a part of my life, right? You just think, well, once I do, I'm going to pick up momentum, right? And then I'm going to be unstoppable, So that's part of, like, how I've managed to, like, cut out a lot of, horrible behaviors that I used to have, man. Like, shit that ruined my life, Like, I cheated on my baby mother. I was at a point where I was hooking up with just random ass people all the time, right? And, smoking weed and drinking and taking pills and, just all these, like, destructive behaviors. And as I'm doing it, I'm looking at myself like, why are we doing this, James? Why are we doing this, James? It's like I'd be, like, outside of my own body watching myself do the shit. Just like, oh, here we are again. Here we go again, right? And so now that I've cut out a lot of, almost all of those, really, really detrimental negative behaviors, right? Like, all the ones that, like, really ruined my life, I've cut out, right? So the cheating and the random hookups and the, drinking and smoking weed and pills and, like, the major ones, lashing out at people to where I could fucking, end up fucking somebody up and ended up doing time in prison. I've cut, like, all that shit out that could really, really have the potential to ruin my life forever, right? I've, cut out all those super negative behaviors, and now the shit that I sometimes beat myself up is shit that's a lot more, it might seem a lot more petty, but the way I look at it is, like, my standards are raising of what I expect of myself, right? And so it's like, I beat myself up if I sleep in. I beat myself up if I eat a bunch of sugar throughout the day. I beat myself up if I, break and I watch some porn. Like, I beat myself up if I'm rude to somebody. You know what I mean? So it's like, as you cut out negative, destructive behaviors, right, your standard of what you expect of yourself is gonna raise, right? And as you continue to, like, raise your standards and what you expect of yourself, then you become better, so that was just, like, an interesting thought I had. Catch you guys next time.